4,000 characters or 47 lines, that decide your entire future. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. Welcome to the fourth video in the series all about the personal statement. Now this video will be rather detailed, so I've divided it into sections. Firstly, we'll discuss what is a personal statement. Next, we'll talk about how to structure a personal statement. Then we'll move on to how to write a personal statement for joint courses. Then I shall outline some do's and don'ts for your personal statement. There'll be some example personal statements and then a summary. So let's begin by discussing what a personal statement is and what it is trying to achieve. As I mentioned in my hyperbolic introduction, the personal statement is 4,000 characters or 47 lines, depending on which limit you reach first. Its purpose is to tell universities why they should pick you. You're selling yourself in a very well-crafted and intelligent way. You don't want to sound, however, obnoxious, arrogant, or overbearing in your statement. Pick me, hi, pick me. You want to come across enthusiastic, engaged, and sincerely interested in learning about the degree that you're applying for. Getting the tone just right is part of the skill of writing the personal statement, and you'll have to do it a lot for when you're applying for jobs, so practicing now for the future is perfect. Also, the personal statement section of the UCAS application is timed, so I do suggest that you write it in a Word document and then copy-paste into the form rather than trying to do it within the 20 minutes allocated. Yeah, you can't really write it in 20 minutes, so don't do that. Now we come on to structure. Oxford's different to other universities because they would prefer your statement to be 80% academic, while other institutes would prefer 70% academic. So as a guideline, here's something to help you get started on writing your personal statement. Paragraph 1. Why have you chosen this degree? Simple. You want to convey to the university why you're applying for this course in a simple and precise way. This paragraph is also useful because it clarifies that the degree that you have picked is the one that you want to do. Paragraph 2. What have you learnt in school that relates to the degree that you're applying for? This paragraph aims to show how your studies directly link to the interests you just stated above. Section 3 is all about your wider reading, things that you've done outside of the curriculum that relate to your interest in the degree that you're applying for. Section 4 is about other things that you've done outside of your school curriculum that support your interest in the degree that you're choosing to apply for. For example, trips to the theatre, trips abroad, trips to a museum, etc. Or you could include some more extra reading information here. And finally, Section 5, this is where you include all your hobbies, your sports interests, your music interests, and the like. Now that's the outline, so let's go into more detail. To help you with the first section, I suggest that you get a piece of paper or perhaps open up a Word document and just jot down bullet points of the questions that I'm asking now. They'll help you get thinking and write down as many as you can because we can always cut stuff later on. So for the first section, ask yourself these questions. Firstly, what degree have you chosen to study? Secondly, why have you chosen to study it? For example, you might want to do medicine because you enjoy caring for people, or you might want to do computer science because you want to learn more sophisticated programming so you can build better software. Crude examples, but you get the idea. Next, what first attracted you to the subject? Perhaps it's the way authors weave their beliefs within their novels through extensive metaphors and lovely wordplay, and that's what attracted you to English. Next, what topics within the degree do you find particularly interesting? Maybe research into environmental chemistry is of great interest to you because it's so relevant to the future of our society. And the next question is, what subjects at your school have contributed to your interest in the degree that you have chosen to study? If you did history, maybe the module on the Cold War was of particular interest because it showed you how delicate international relations are, and that fueled your interest in politics. And finally, is there a career that you have in mind that your degree choice supports? If you've chosen law, maybe you want to get involved in cases that prevent the regulation of the internet so that it remains the last place humans are truly free. You don't have to answer all of these questions in your statement, but they do help you get started. The more ideas you have down on paper, the more you have to choose from. Now the second section is all about how your school curriculum relates to your interest in the degree that you have chosen to study. Now the subjects that you do at A-level or the equivalent qualification that you're doing at the moment, they don't have to match the degree that you're applying for. For example, I did history, English literature, chemistry and maths, and I managed to mention all of them in my personal statement and how they link to my interest in PPE. Now you want to focus on particular topics within the subject that you're studying at the moment and how that's relevant to the degree that you want to study. You can also draw on the skills that studying that particular subject has taught you and how those skills then relate to the degree that you're studying and how they are important to the degree that you want to study. So for each subject that you're studying at the moment, ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, what do you find interesting about that subject? And number 2, how does it relate to the degree that you have chosen to study? There will be examples later on of personal statements to show you exactly what I mean by this. Now we come to section 3, and this section is extremely important, and it is all about wider reading. Now, wider reading shows that you are truly engaged with the subject you are applying for because you are going beyond your curriculum to find out information about it. Now, on the department website for the degree you're applying for, there's usually suggested reading lists, but if there aren't any suggested reading lists, then don't worry about that. It's not so much what you've read, but it's more what you've gained from what you've read. Obviously, this advice is within reason. Don't read The Sun to keep you up to date with current affairs because that's probably not the best use of your time. So apparently Holly thinks people should control themselves better. As a 1st century BC Roman philosopher, Seneca once said, drunkenness is nothing but voluntary madness. It's actually quite good. Well, okay, yeah, you can use The Sun in your personal statement, just don't reference to it, okay, because that's actually a pretty good quote, and quite profound in some ways. Oh, page 3 girls. Right, so you also have to make sure that you are reading productively. That means you should keep a log of what you are reading. Keep a note of the title and the author. Briefly outline what has been said in the text. How does what you've read relate to what you want to study for a degree? Note down things you liked about the text and note down things that you didn't like about the text. Being critical is really important. By keeping a log like this, it will improve your understanding of the text and force you to think critically, which is how you should be reading at this level. Now we come to section 4, extracurricular. Here is surprisingly where you write down all the extra things that you have done that relate to the degree that you want to study. These activities show that you are so engaged and enthusiastic about the degree that you want to study that you have gone off and done all these extra things that contribute to that interest. Make a list of any volunteer work that you've done, any trips you've gone on, any summer schools that you've been on, or any positions of responsibility you've had in your school, etc, etc. The key with this section is to identify supercurricular activities that you have done. By supercurricular I mean activities that you have done that have benefited your interest in the degree that you want to study. Oxford is less interested in what you have done in particular, but more what you have gained from what you have done. It is for this reason that Oxford does not discriminate against people who have gone to the UN to witness a debate on some sort of global issue, against somebody who, say, has volunteered at a hospital. What matters here is showing that you have benefited from the experience because obviously not everybody has the same opportunities as everyone else, and Oxford know this. And section 5 is interests, and this is where everything else goes. Sports you've taken part in, instruments you've played, and performances that you've performed in. But again, the trick to this section is to show how, having done these things, you've developed skills that will be beneficial for the degree that you want to do. For example, being a grade 8 in violin shows that you are committed, and that will probably help you with the workload at Oxford. To be honest, I didn't actually focus on this section too much in my actual statement. I focused more on the previous section and showed how those activities all tied together to benefit my interest in the degree that I wanted to do. However, other institutes do like to see your interest because it presents you as a well-rounded candidate, and Oxford do know this, so if you do feel the need to present your interests, etc., then do. This whole structure is of course only a guideline. Now, how do I rate if I'm doing a joint course? If you're applying for a joint course such as History and Economics or PPE, there is a trick to get around the idea that you only have half as much space or a third as much space to convey your passion for the subject that you are choosing to apply for. And that trick is to focus on the crossover between the different subjects. I also tied in the wider reading that I had done in politics with the wider reading that I had done in economics. Thinking like this will save you space in your personal statement and allow you more room to express your enthusiasm for the subject that you want to do. Plus, it will reduce the amount of work that you have to do, which is good for everyone. Now, what do you do if you're applying for different courses at different universities? I was applying for PPE at Oxford, but I was also applying for other courses such as government and economics at other institutes. To get around this, you can use the advice from earlier by identifying the crossover between the subjects, and that will allow you to make your personal statement applicable to all the institutes and all the courses that you're applying for. If that advice doesn't work, then you're probably picking degrees at universities that are too different from each other, and maybe you don't really know exactly what you want to do yet, so I do suggest that you go and watch the How to Choose a Degree video again. Now we come to the do's and don'ts of writing a personal statement. Now we will start with the do's, and the first do is to write a few drafts. It's highly unlikely that the first one that you write will be perfect. I suggest that you write one with all of your interests in, and then over time cut them down to the main things that you want to tell Oxford about you. Now, the things that remain will usually be the strongest things about your application, and it will also mean that because you've cut the other things, you'll have more room to express your enthusiasm in these particular areas and to show Oxford how wonderful you are. So to summarise, write more on less. The second do is to proofread and make sure your grammar, spelling and syntax, etc. are all perfect. Also, spell checkers are not completely reliable, so make sure that you proofread it. I suggest reading it aloud because that allows you to just hear for certain things. Also, get a friend or a parent or a teacher to read it as well, just to make sure everything is all in place. Also, another do is try rewording expressions to save on characters. For example, instead of saying in order to, just say to. Instead of saying whether or not, just say whether. Also, try not to use words like very, because usually they are very, 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 very unnecessary in a sentence. As you're redrafting, you'll see more succinct ways of expressing things. It just comes with practice, so just keep redrafting. Oh, it's also worth noting that when you paste a statement into the UCAS form, it strips it of any formatting, so don't bother with anything fancy. And the final do is be straightforward and to the point. An idiot can make something complicated, but it takes a genius to make something simple. Now we come on to the don'ts. Do not lie. Seriously, don't lie. No, really, if you say that you have read a book, make sure you actually have read that book, because if it comes to the interview stage and you haven't, you're in hot water. This even includes things of writing on your personal statement you have read a book and then planning on reading it by the time you might get an interview. Because usually people don't read those books and then they get asked about them and then you're screwed. Do not plagiarize. This will result in your application exploding, so definitely don't copy anybody else's work. The tutors want to get to know you, not somebody else. Also, don't leave it until the last minute. The deadline for the Oxford application is the 15th of October, so you need to make sure that you're ahead of things if you want it to be at its best. Also, do not just list books that you've read. Anyone can do that. Talk a little about the book, because that proves that you've actually looked on the inside of the book and not just the cover of the book. And penultimately, do not be negative. Don't focus on any difficulties with employers or teachers, because that doesn't look very good on you. For example, don't say I love geography, but I felt I was held back by my moronic teacher because he kept giving me detentions. That's not helpful. And finally, don't be too weirdly passionate or clever. For example, I once read a statement that said I knew I wanted to be a doctor when I was 4, because instead of being excited about Christmas, I was really excited about my uncle's triple bypass. Now, I've asked my peers from a range of subjects to donate their personal statements to help you guys with your applications, and they have kindly said yes. I will somehow link them to the information part of the video so you guys can have a read of those. Again, use them as a guide. Every personal statement is different. There is no such thing as the perfect personal statement, even from the people who have actually gotten into Oxford. For example, I recently reread mine and I cringed at some points, but I definitely saw ways in which it could be improved. So to summarise, there you have it. A detailed look at the personal statement. Now, I know you'll have lots of questions about this because everybody always does, so please do post them in the comments and I will try and answer your questions in an upcoming video. Until then, I've been Jamie, this has been fun, goodbye. Subscribe, go on, do it. Do it! Do it! Please. One, war, rar, rar, I'm a pirate.